They say laziness doesn't destroy you all at once. It does it quietly. It waits. It whispers. It comforts you into doing nothing until one day it's too late. This is the story of Edward Miller, a man who mistook comfort for peace and rest for happiness. Edward lived in a small European town, known for its cobbled streets and clock towers. He was a quiet man, the kind who never caused trouble, never argued, and never took risks. He worked as an apprentice under an old carpenter named Mr. Whitlock, a strict but fair man who believed that hard work built not only furniture, but character. At first, Edward admired his master. He watched him shape raw wood into art, every strike of the hammer full of purpose. But as days turned into months, Edward began to notice something. The old man was always tired, always busy, always sweating in that dusty shop. And he thought to himself, what's the point of working so hard when life is meant to be enjoyed? He started coming in late. Sometimes he'd sit by the riverbank, watching the world go by while Mr. Whitlock worked alone. He told himself he'd make up for it tomorrow, but tomorrow never came. Mr. Whitlock warned him one evening, Edward, laziness is like rot. It starts small, then it eats the wood from within. You won't see the damage until it's too late. Edward smiled politely but didn't listen. He thought the old man was overreacting. After all, life seemed long, too long to rush. When Mr. Whitlock retired, he handed Edward the workshop keys. You have talent, he said, but talent without discipline is a wasted gift. Don't waste it, boy, Edward promised he wouldn't. But as soon as the old man left town, Edward's promise faded. At first, he worked with excitement. He fixed chairs, carved small ornaments, built shelves for the townsfolk. But soon the spark died. He began to delay orders. When customers knocked, he'd say, come back next week, even though the wood sat untouched behind him. He preferred spending his mornings at the bakery, sipping tea and talking about the weather. Months turned to years, and Edward's shop, once filled with noise and purpose, became silent. The tools gathered dust, the windows fogged over, and yet Edward never felt alarmed. He always believed there would be time, plenty of time, to start again. One morning, a young carpenter opened a workshop across the street. His name was Samuel. He worked from dawn till dusk, greeting every customer with energy. Soon everyone in town went to Samuel's shop instead. Edward told himself, he'll burn out. He's working too hard, but Samuel didn't burn out. He built his name. And Edward watched from across the street as the sound of hammers and laughter filled Samuel's workshop. The years passed quietly. Edward's hair turned gray. His hands, once steady, began to tremble. The shop that had once smelled of pine and sawdust now smelled of stale air and regret. One evening, while cleaning the shelves, he found an old letter. It was from Mr. Whitlock. The paper had yellowed, the ink slightly faded. It read, Dear Edward, I hope you've built something you're proud of. But if not, I hope you've learned that time is the only thing you can't repair once it's broken. Edward froze. For the first time in years, tears filled his eyes. He looked around the workshop. The dust, the silence, the unfinished projects, and it all hit him. He hadn't been resting. He'd been decaying. That night, Edward couldn't sleep. He lay awake thinking about every moment he'd wasted, every chance he'd ignored, every promise he'd broken to himself. He realized that laziness wasn't peace. It was a slow surrender. The next morning, Edward did something he hadn't done in years. He got up before sunrise. He lit a lamp in his workshop and began to work. His hands shook at first, but soon the rhythm returned. He sanded, carved, and nailed with a quiet determination. For days, he worked like a man possessed, crafting one final masterpiece, a wooden clock, beautiful and precise. When he finished, he carved 3 words into its base, too late learned. The clock was his confession and his apology. He placed it in the shop window, hoping someone might see it and understand. Weeks later, Samuel visited. He found Edward asleep at his workbench, his tools beside him, a faint smile on his face. Edward had passed away in the night, not in regret, but in peace. He had finally done what he'd always avoided. He finished something he started. Samuel took the clock and placed it in his own workshop. Whenever apprentices came in complaining about work or saying, "I'll do it tomorrow," he would point to the clock and say, "This belonged to a man named Edward Miller. He waited too long. Don't make the same mistake." And if you're listening to this right now, maybe you've been waiting too. Maybe you've been saying, "I'll start tomorrow." But tomorrow is a liar. Tomorrow doesn't exist. Only now does. Edward's story teaches us that laziness doesn't steal your dreams in one day. It does it piece by piece, moment by moment. And when you finally wake up, you'll realize the world moved on without you. So start today, even if it's small, even if you're tired, even if you don't feel ready. Because once you take that first step, momentum begins. And once it begins, your future changes. Don't be like Edward. Don't learn too late. Get up. Start now. Because the clock is ticking and it waits for no one. And if you believe that too, join us and subscribe to this channel.